It was June 2024, and Emily, a marine biologist, was snorkeling in the warm waters of the Caribbean near the coast of Belize. Emily, a 32-year-old from Miami, Florida, had dedicated her life to studying the ocean and its ecosystems. From a young age, she was fascinated by marine life and dreamed of becoming a marine biologist. Her passion led her to pursue a degree in marine biology, and she has spent the past decade researching coral reefs and their inhabitants. Emily's work took her to many beautiful and remote locations worldwide, but the Caribbean held a special place in her heart. The vibrant coral reefs, teeming with colorful fish and diverse marine species, provided a perfect setting for her studies. She loved the tranquility of the underwater world and her sense of purpose while conducting her research. On the morning of June 15th, Emily set out on a small boat with her snorkeling gear and research equipment. The weather was perfect, with clear skies and calm seas. She was excited to explore a new section of the coral reef and document her findings. As she entered the water, she felt the familiar excitement of discovery. The water was warm and clear, offering excellent visibility. Emily swam gracefully over the coral, taking notes and photographs of the vibrant ecosystem below. She observed various fish species, sea anemones, and other marine creatures going about their daily lives. It was a serene and beautiful scene, and Emily felt utterly at peace. As she continued her study, Emily noticed a sudden movement out of the corner of her eye. She turned to see a large barracuda swimming nearby. The fish, known for its speed and sharp teeth, was attracted to the shiny reflections from her diving gear. The barracuda's curious gaze made her uneasy, but she knew it was essential to remain calm and not provoke the fish. The barracuda began to follow her, its eyes fixed on the shiny objects on her gear. Emily's serene study session quickly turned into a tense escape. She knew she had to get back to the boat without making any sudden movements that might trigger the barracuda's predatory instincts. Her heart raced as she slowly began to swim towards the ship, keeping her movements smooth and steady. The boat was anchored a short distance away, and Emily focused on reaching it safely. She reminded herself of the importance of respecting marine wildlife and being aware of their behavior. The barracuda continued to follow her, its interest in the shiny gear unwavering. Emily's knowledge of marine life and her training as a marine biologist were crucial then. She understood that panicking or making sudden movements could escalate the situation. She swam carefully, focused on staying calm and reaching the boat's safety. The once peaceful waters now felt tense as she returned, the barracuda close behind. Emily continued to swim steadily towards the boat, her heart pounding with each stroke. The barracuda stayed close, its sharp teeth glinting in the clear water. Emily knew that barracudas were curious creatures, often drawn to shiny objects, but this close encounter was unnerving. She maintained her calm, focusing on reaching the safety of the boat. The distance to the boat seemed to stretch forever. Emily moved with deliberate slowness, avoiding any sudden movements. The clear waters of the Caribbean, usually so inviting, now felt like a place of hidden danger. The vibrant coral reefs and colorful fish seemed to blur as her mind focused on her escape. As she swam, Emily thought about her work and the importance of understanding marine life. This experience was a stark reminder of the delicate balance between humans and ocean creatures. Respecting their space and behavior was crucial. Emily's knowledge and experience guided her as she navigated this tense situation. The boat was now in sight, just a few meters away. Emily could see the outline of her equipment and the familiar shape of the boat's hull. She felt a surge of hope, knowing that safety was within reach. The barracuda continued to follow, its eyes still fixed on her. Emily kept her movements slow and steady, inching closer to the boat. Finally, she reached the side of the boat. With careful precision, she grabbed the ladder and began to climb up. The barracuda hovered nearby, but Emily's slow and deliberate actions kept it from becoming aggressive. She pulled herself onto the boat, feeling relief wash over her. Once on the boat, Emily took a moment to catch her breath. She looked back at the water where the barracuda still lingered. The encounter had been a reminder of the ocean's unpredictability and the need for respect and caution. Emily carefully removed her shiny gear, placing it out of sight, and checked her surroundings to ensure the barracuda had lost interest. The waters near Belize's coast are known for their rich marine life and stunning coral reefs. Emily felt a renewed respect for the creatures that inhabited this beautiful environment. Her encounter with the barracuda highlighted the importance of being aware and prepared, even in familiar waters. Emily decided to take a break and reflect on her experience. She knew that her work as a marine biologist was important not only for scientific knowledge, but also for promoting safety and awareness among those who ventured into the ocean. She noted the encounter and planned to share her experience with colleagues and students. As the sun set over the Caribbean, Emily packed her equipment and prepared to return to shore. The tranquil beauty of the sea was once again evident, but Emily's perspective had deepened. She understood the ocean was a place of wonder and danger, requiring admiration and caution. Emily's return to the shore was calm and uneventful. She docked the boat and carefully unloaded her gear. The bustling activity of the beach contrasted with the serene and tense moments she had just experienced. She felt grateful for her training and knowledge, which had guided her safely through the encounter. In the following days, Emily shared her story with her peers and students, emphasizing the importance of respecting marine wildlife and being prepared for unexpected situations. Her experience was a valuable lesson for all who heard it, reinforcing the need for awareness and caution in the ocean. Emily continued her research with a renewed sense of purpose. Her love for the ocean remained strong, but her respect for its inhabitants had grown even more profound. She knew that every dive and snorkel brought new learning opportunities, and that each experience, whether serene or tense, contributed to her understanding of the delicate balance between humans and the sea. Carlos Ramirez, a seasoned fisherman, had spent countless hours on the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, a place he knew better than the streets of his small hometown in Veracruz, Mexico. On a warm summer day in 2007, Carlos set out on his boat for what he hoped would be a productive day of fishing. The Gulf, with its vast expanse and rich marine life, had always been generous to him, and today felt like it would be no different. Carlos was not alone. His younger brother, Javier, had joined him on this trip, eager to learn the tricks of the trade from his older sibling. The brothers spent the morning casting lines and reeling in fish, their laughter mingling with the gentle sound of waves lapping against the boat. The sun was high and the day seemed perfect, with the blue sky reflecting off the calm waters. As the afternoon wore on, Carlos felt a sudden, strong tug on his line. It was different from anything he had felt before, far stronger, more forceful. His experience told him this was no ordinary catch. He braced himself, gripping the rod tightly as the line pulled harder, almost ripping it from his hands. Javier watched, his excitement growing as he imagined the size of the fish they were about to land. But as Carlos struggled to reel it in, the line suddenly pulled even harder, yanking him forward. The rod bent sharply and Carlos gritted his teeth, using all his strength to keep his balance. This was not a fish. It was something much more powerful. The boat began to tilt slightly, as whatever was on the other end of the line pulled with tremendous force. Carlos yelled at Javier to grab the net, but before he could, the creature on the line made a sudden, violent dive. The line went taut, and in a split second, Carlos was pulled off his feet and overboard. The cold water engulfed him as he plunged into the depths, the line still wrapped around his wrist. Underwater, disoriented and struggling to free himself, Carlos realized what he had hooked, a massive stingray. The creature was enormous, its wingspan stretching wide as it glided through the water, dragging him along. Carlos's heart pounded as he came face to face with the stingray. Its dark eyes seemed to peer into his soul, and its long, venomous barb flicked dangerously close to his body. Stingrays are generally docile creatures, but when threatened or provoked, they can become deadly. Carlos knew this all too well. A sting from the ray's barb could paralyze him, or worse, kill him. Panic surged through him as he struggled against the pull of the stingray, trying desperately to free the line that had entangled his wrist. The stingray, sensing its chance to escape, made another dive, dragging Carlos deeper into the dark water. His lungs burned as he fought to hold his breath, his vision narrowing as the pressure built around him. He knew he didn't have much time before he would black out. The stingray thrashed violently, its barb now inches from his torso. Carlos kicked out, trying to push himself away from the deadly creature. But the stingray's powerful movements made it nearly impossible to break free. As Carlos wrestled with the line, his mind raced. He thought of his family, his brother still on the boat, likely in a panic. He couldn't die here, not like this. Summoning all his strength, Carlos reached for the knife he kept strapped to his belt. His hands trembled as he fumbled with the sheath, but he finally managed to free the blade. With a swift motion, Carlos slashed at the line, cutting it free from his wrist. The stingray, feeling the sudden release of tension, darted away into the dark waters, leaving Carlos floating alone in the murky depths. His chest heaved as he fought to stay conscious, his muscles burning from the exertion. He kicked toward the surface, his limbs heavy and uncooperative. The light from above seemed impossibly far, but Carlos kept pushing, knowing it was his only chance. His vision blurred, and just as he thought he wouldn't make it, his head broke through the surface and he gasped for air, his lungs burning with each breath. Javier, who had been frantically searching for his brother, spotted Carlos and shouted in relief. He quickly threw a rope overboard, and Carlos, exhausted and barely able to move, grabbed hold. Javier pulled him back onto the boat with all his might, and Carlos collapsed on the deck, coughing up water and gasping for breath. The two brothers sat in silence for a moment, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Carlos's wrist was bruised and bleeding from where the line had dug into his skin, and his entire body ached from the struggle. But he was alive. The stingray had disappeared into the depths, and the calm of the ocean had returned as if nothing had happened. As they headed back to shore, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the water. Carlos leaned back, his body still trembling from the encounter. He had faced death in the form of a creature that most people never see, let alone survive an encounter with. The experience left him shaken, but also with a profound respect for the ocean and its inhabitants. It was May 2024, and Maya, an adventure enthusiast, was kayaking in the clear waters of the Mediterranean Sea near the coast of Santorini, Greece. Maya, a 27-year-old from Athens, loved exploring the outdoors and was passionate about water sports. She often sought out new and exciting adventures, from hiking in the mountains to diving in the ocean. Her adventurous spirit and love for nature made her experience the world uniquely. Maya had been planning this kayaking trip for months. The Mediterranean Sea was the perfect destination for her latest adventure, with its crystal-clear waters and beautiful scenery. She carefully prepared for the journey, packing all the necessary gear, including her kayak, paddle, and safety equipment. She was well versed in the rules of water safety and always carried a first aid kit, knowing the importance of being prepared. On the morning of May 10th, the weather was perfect for kayaking. The sky was clear and the sea was calm, making it an ideal day for an adventure. Maya set out early, excited to explore the waters around Santorini. She paddled through the gentle waves, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of her surroundings. The coastline was dotted with charming white buildings and lush greenery, creating a picturesque backdrop for her journey. After several hours of paddling, Maya decided to take a break and enjoy a swim. She found a secluded spot away from the crowded beaches where the water was inviting and clear. She secured her kayak and slipped into the water, feeling the calm, refreshing sea against her skin. The peaceful environment made her feel at ease, and she floated lazily, soaking in the sun. Unbeknownst to Maya, a massive lion's mane jellyfish was drifting nearby. With its long, trailing tentacles, the jellyfish was almost invisible in the clear water. As Maya swam, she did not notice the jellyfish slowly approaching. The tranquil setting masked the hidden danger lurking just below the surface. As Maya dived deeper into the water, she suddenly felt a sharp, burning pain. The jellyfish's tentacles had wrapped around her, delivering a painful sting. Shocked and in pain, Maya quickly realized what had happened. Her relaxing swim had turned into a frantic struggle for survival. She had to free herself from the jellyfish's grip and return to her kayak as quickly as possible. Maya's knowledge of first aid and her quick thinking were crucial. She knew she had to stay calm and not panic. Despite the pain, she began to swim back towards her kayak, determined to escape the jellyfish's tentacles. The clear waters of the Mediterranean, which had seemed so inviting, now felt like a trap. Maya's heart raced as she reached her kayak, and her skin burned from the stings. She pulled herself onto the kayak, grateful to be out of the water. The encounter had been a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that could be found in even the most beautiful places. Maya sat on her kayak, catching her breath and assessing her situation. The stings from the lion's mane jellyfish were painful, but she knew she had to act quickly to prevent further complications. She reached into her first aid kit, which she always kept in her kayak, and found the supplies she had packed for emergencies. Remembering the advice to use salt water for jellyfish stings, she carefully poured salt water over the affected areas. The cool liquid relieved the burning sensation, which was crucial in rinsing away any remaining tentacles and easing the discomfort caused by the jellyfish's venom. The coastline of Santorini was still some distance away, and Maya knew she had to paddle back despite the pain. She gathered her strength and began paddling steadily towards the shore. The rhythmic motion of paddling helped distract her from the discomfort, and she focused on maintaining a smooth and steady pace. The sun was high in the sky, and the clear blue waters sparkled around her, but Maya's mind was set on reaching safety. As she paddled, she thought about the jellyfish and the unexpected danger it had posed. The lion's mane jellyfish was known for its painful sting, and Maya realized how lucky she was to have escaped without more severe injuries. She reminded herself always to stay vigilant and aware of her surroundings, no matter how peaceful the environment might seem. After what felt like an eternity, Maya finally reached the shore. The familiar sight of the white buildings and bustling beach brought her a sense of relief. She pulled her kayak onto the sand and sat down to rest. A few beachgoers noticed her and asked if she needed help. Maya explained what had happened, and they offered her water and a place to sit while she recovered. Maya took some time to rest and let the pain subside. She drank water and rinsed the stings with more salt water. The kind gestures of the people around her reminded her of the importance of community and support in times of need. She felt grateful for their assistance and was glad to be on solid ground again. Reflecting on her adventure, Maya realized that this experience had taught her valuable lessons about the ocean's hidden dangers. She knew she would continue her adventures, but with a renewed sense of caution and respect for the sea. With its beauty and tranquility, the Mediterranean Sea held many secrets, and Maya understood the need to be prepared for anything. As the sun set, Maya decided to head back to her hotel. She packed up her gear and thanked the people who had helped her. The walk back along the beach gave her time to think about the day's events and how she could share her experience with others to raise awareness about ocean safety. Maya took a long shower at her hotel to wash away the salt and remaining residue from the stings. She felt a sense of accomplishment for handling the situation calmly and effectively. The pain from the stings was subsiding, and she knew she would recover fully in a few days. Maya's encounter with the lion's mane jellyfish reminded her of the ocean's unpredictable nature. She deeply respected the sea and its inhabitants, understanding that adventure always comes with risks. Her love for exploring and her respect for nature had grown even more robust, and she looked forward to her next adventure, knowing she would be better prepared and more aware. Maya shared her story with friends and fellow adventurers in the following days. Her experience highlighted the importance of knowledge and preparedness when exploring the natural world. While daunting, the hidden dangers of the ocean could be managed with the right approach and mindset. Maya's tale became a lesson for many, emphasizing the need to respect and understand the environment while pursuing one's passions. On a warm evening in August 2012 at the popular surf spot of Laguna Point in Southern California, a group of friends decided to make the most of the fading daylight. Laguna Point was known for its excellent waves and stunning sunsets, drawing surfers from all over the state. The group, consisting of Alex Rivera, Nate Wilson, Hannah Clark, and Jordan Mitchell, had spent the day riding the waves and enjoying the beach. They were seasoned surfers, comfortable with the ocean's ebb and flow, but this day would challenge their skills and bravery in unexpected ways. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the water, the friends paddled out for one last session. The air was filled with the sounds of seagulls and the gentle roar of the surf. It had been a perfect day so far, filled with laughter and the thrill of catching wave after wave. The group was eager to take advantage of the diminishing light to capture the last moments of daylight on their boards. Great white sharks were known to inhabit the waters of Southern California. These powerful predators could grow up to 20 feet long and were apex predators in the ocean. While shark attacks were rare, dusk and dawn were known to be prime hunting times for these creatures, as their prey was more active and visibility was lower. As the light continued to fade, the surfers noticed the water becoming darker, shadows lengthening beneath them. The mood was still light, filled with the camaraderie of friends who had shared countless waves. Alex, the most experienced of the group, was the first to notice a change in the water's behavior. The waves seemed less predictable and the water was more agitated. He mentioned it to the others, but they brushed it off, eager to catch the last waves of the day. Suddenly, without warning, a large dark shape appeared beneath the surface, moving with terrifying speed. The great white shark in search of prey had mistaken the surfers for seals, its usual meal. The shark struck with incredible force, targeting Nate, who was closest to its path. In an instant, the tranquility of the evening was shattered. The shark's powerful jaws clamped down on Nate's leg, pulling him off his board and into the water. His screams of pain and terror cut through the air, sending a jolt of fear through his friends. The water around Nate turned red as the shark's teeth tore into his flesh. Panic erupted among the group as they realized the gravity of the situation. Alex, Hannah, and Jordan watched in horror, their minds racing to find a way to save their friend. Alex, drawing on his experience and quick thinking, paddled towards Nate, yelling at Hannah and Jordan to head back to shore and get help. The shark, momentarily distracted by its initial attack, circled back for another strike. Alex reached Nate, grabbed him, and tried to pull him onto his board. The shark's massive body loomed beneath them, its dorsal fin cutting through the water with deadly precision. The great white shark was relentless, its instinct to hunt overpowering any hesitation. As Alex struggled to lift Nate onto his board, the shark surged upwards, its jaws snapping at them. Alex used his board as a shield, trying to fend off the predator while holding onto Nate. The water was a chaos of thrashing limbs and the churn of the shark's powerful tail. Nate's leg was severely injured, with blood flowing freely into the water, further agitating the shark. The pain was excruciating, but he clung to Alex, trusting his friend to get him to safety. Alex's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to escape. The shore seemed impossibly far, and the shark was too close, too aggressive. Meanwhile, Hannah and Jordan had reached the shore, frantically waving for help. Their cries alerted other beachgoers and surfers, who quickly realized the dire situation unfolding in the water. Someone called 911, and within minutes local authorities and lifeguards were mobilizing to assist. The urgency was palpable. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the two figures battling the shark in the distance. Back in the water, the shark made another pass, its eyes cold and focused. Alex knew they couldn't outswim it. Their only chance was to make it seem like too much of a challenge to pursue. With every ounce of strength he had left, Alex struck the shark's snout with his fist, a desperate attempt to deter it. The shark recoiled slightly, momentarily disoriented. Seizing the moment, Alex paddled furiously, pulling Nate along with him. The effort was grueling, but the adrenaline and fear drove him forward. The shark, regaining its bearings, began to circle again, its dorsal fin slicing through the water menacingly. It was a race against time, and Alex could feel his energy waning. Just as the shark closed in for another attack, a rescue boat appeared, speeding toward them. Lifeguards on the boat threw a rope and flotation device to Alex, who grabbed it with relief. They hauled Nate aboard first, his leg a mangled mess of flesh and blood. Alex was pulled in next, collapsing onto the deck, his body trembling from the exertion and fear. The lifeguards immediately tended to Nate's injuries, applying pressure to the wound to slow the bleeding. The boat sped back to shore, where paramedics were waiting to take Nate to the hospital. Alex lay on the deck, his chest heaving, grateful that they had made it out alive. On shore, the beach was a flurry of activity. Authorities cordoned off the area, and shark experts arrived to assess the situation. The attack had been sudden and brutal, a stark reminder of the ocean's dangers. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting the beach in shadow, a sense of calm began to return. The friends gathered, shaken but relieved that they were all alive. In the days that followed, local authorities and shark experts worked to understand why the shark had ventured so close to the surf zone. They increased patrols and issued warnings about the dangers of dusk and dawn surfing, hoping to prevent future incidents. The attack left a lasting impact on the community, a sobering reminder of the unpredictable power of the sea. It was July 2024, and Jake, a seasoned surfer, was riding the waves off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. Jake, a 28-year-old from Honolulu, had been surfing since childhood. Growing up on the island, he spent countless hours in the water, developing a deep love for the ocean. His former professional surfer father had taught him everything he knew about surfing and the sea. Over the years, Jake became an expert known for his skill and fearlessness in the waves. Surfing was more than just a hobby for Jake. It was a way of life. He enjoyed the thrill of catching a big wave and the peace he felt while on the water. Every morning he would head to the beach, his surfboard under his arm, ready to take on whatever the ocean had in store. The north shore of Oahu, famous for its massive waves, was his favorite spot. He knew the waters well and had a deep respect for their power. On the morning of July 18th, the weather was perfect for surfing. The sun was shining, and the waves were just right. Jake paddled out, feeling the familiar rush of excitement as he approached the surf. The water was clear and warm, and he could see the coral reefs below. He caught a few sound waves, enjoying the ride and their challenge. As he waited for the next set of waves, Jake felt a sudden, powerful jolt from below. His board shook, and he nearly lost his balance. Looking down, he saw the unmistakable shape of a giant tiger shark circling beneath him. His heart raced as he realized the danger he was in. The shark, likely mistaking his board for prey, was investigating him. Jake's thrilling surf session had turned into a fight for survival. He knew he had to stay calm and think quickly. He remembered his father's lessons about shark behavior and the importance of not panicking. Using his board, he tried to keep the shark at a distance. He moved slowly and deliberately, avoiding sudden movements that might provoke an attack. The tiger shark continued to circle, its movements slow and deliberate. Jake knew he had to get to shore, but he also knew that turning his back on the shark could be dangerous. He carefully maneuvered his board, keeping it between him and the shark as he paddled towards the beach. His knowledge of shark behavior and quick reflexes were crucial in this tense situation. With each stroke, Jake edged closer to safety. The shark followed, but Jake's calm and controlled actions kept it at bay. The beach seemed far off, but he was determined to make it. His arms ached from the effort, but he focused on getting to shore. The encounter was a stark reminder of the delicate balance between enjoying ocean sports and respecting the dangers that come with them. Jake continued to paddle toward the shore, his muscles straining with each stroke. The tiger shark maintained its steady pace, circling beneath him, its presence a constant reminder of the danger. Jake's mind was focused on reaching safety, but he also remained aware of the shark's movements. He kept his board between himself and the predator, using it as a shield. The shark's shape became more visible as he approached the shallower waters. The sunlight penetrated the clear water, highlighting the shark's sleek body and powerful tail. Jake knew that tiger sharks were curious and often aggressive, but he hoped the shallow water would deter them from following him further. He moved deliberately, avoiding any sudden splashes that might attract more attention. The shore was now in sight, and Jake could see a few other surfers and beachgoers. He felt a surge of hope, knowing that help was nearby if he needed it. However, he also knew he had to remain calm and avoid paying attention to the shark. Panicking now could make the situation worse. With careful strokes, Jake paddled into the surf zone where the waves began to break. The water here was shallower, and he could feel the ocean floor beneath him. He glanced back to see if the shark was still following. To his relief, the tiger shark had veered off, losing interest as it encountered the breaking waves. Jake breathed a sigh of relief but continued to move steadily towards the shore. When he finally reached the beach, Jake climbed out of the water, his legs shaky from the adrenaline. He looked back at the ocean, grateful the shark had disappeared. The other surfers and beachgoers, unaware of the danger he had just faced, continued to enjoy their time in the water. Jake walked up the sand, taking a moment to compose himself. The north shore of Oahu, known for its beautiful beaches and powerful waves, had given Jake another reason to respect the ocean. He knew he had been lucky, and his knowledge and quick thinking had played a crucial role in his survival. he was reminded of the delicate balance between enjoying the ocean's beauty and understanding its risks. After gathering his thoughts, Jake shared his experience with the local surf community. He wanted to raise awareness about the presence of sharks and the importance of staying calm in dangerous situations. His story would remind all surfers and swimmers to respect the ocean and its inhabitants. In the days that followed, Jake reflected on the encounter. He knew he would continue surfing, but with renewed caution. He felt a deeper connection to the ocean, appreciating its power and mystery. The experience had taught him valuable lessons about survival and respect for nature. Jake's encounter with the tiger shark became a story shared among surfers in Oahu and beyond. It highlighted the ocean's unpredictability and the need for knowledge and preparedness. Jake hoped his story would help others understand the importance of respecting the sea and its creatures. Jake carried the lessons he had learned as he returned to the waves. He remained vigilant, constantly aware of his surroundings, but he never lost his love for surfing. With all its beauty and danger, the ocean continued to be his sanctuary, where he felt most alive. The balance between thrill and caution became a part of his surfing journey, a testament to the powerful bond between humans and the sea. It was a chilly morning in November 2005 when Akira Yamamoto, an experienced diver and marine biologist, set out for a deep-sea dive off the coast of Hokkaido, Japan. The waters around Hokkaido were known for their rich marine life, but also for their depth and mystery. Akira had spent years exploring the ocean, fascinated by the creatures that lurked in the darkness. On this particular day, he was eager to explore a part of the sea that few had ventured into, a deep trench known as the Abyssal Zone. Akira had been preparing for this dive for months. The Abyssal Zone was not a place to be taken lightly. It was a world of inky blackness, extreme pressure, and cold temperatures. Yet it was also home to some of the most elusive and bizarre creatures on the planet. Akira was particularly interested in the possibility of encountering a giant squid, a creature that had fascinated him since childhood. Giant squids were rarely seen by humans. Their encounters with divers and submarines were often the stuff of legends. As he prepared his gear, Akira went through his routine checks. His diving suit was reinforced to withstand the crushing pressures of the deep, and his oxygen tanks were filled to capacity. He had a harpoon gun strapped to his side, not to hunt but as a precaution. Akira knew that in the deep sea, where light barely penetrated, danger could come from any direction. The dive boat, manned by two of Akira's colleagues, anchored near the edge of the trench. The sky was overcast and the sea was calm, almost too calm. The water was dark and forbidding, but Akira felt a familiar thrill as he looked out at the vast expanse before him. He gave his colleagues a thumbs up, and with a final deep breath, he stepped off the side of the boat and into the water. As Akira descended, the world around him grew darker and colder. The light from the surface quickly faded, replaced by the eerie glow of bioluminescent creatures that drifted through the water. Small fish and jellyfish with glowing bodies flitted around him, but Akira's focus was on the depths below. He continued to descend, his breathing steady, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Minutes passed, and Akira reached the edge of the Abyssal Zone. The pressure was immense, but his suit held firm. The water was almost black now, with only the faintest traces of light from his headlamp illuminating the way. He moved cautiously, knowing that anything could be lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, Akira noticed a movement to his left. A large shape was drifting slowly through the water. His heart raced as he turned to face it, shining his headlamp towards the creature. It was massive, at least 30 feet long, with long, trailing tentacles that floated eerily in the current. Akira knew immediately what it was: a giant squid. The creature's large, unblinking eyes reflected the light, giving it a ghostly appearance. Akira's excitement quickly turned to caution. The squid was watching him, its tentacles slowly moving as it assessed this strange intruder in its domain. He had read stories of giant squids attacking ships and submarines, their powerful tentacles capable of crushing steel. Akira knew he had to be careful. The squid was a predator, and he was in its territory. Before Akira could react, the squid made its move. In an instant, the creature shot forward, its tentacles reaching out with incredible speed. Akira tried to back away, but the squid was too fast. The long, muscular tentacles wrapped around his legs, pulling him towards its massive body. Akira struggled, kicking out with his legs and trying to free himself, but the squid's grip was like iron. The creature's sharp beak loomed closer as it pulled Akira in. The beak, designed to crush the shells of its prey, was inches away from his torso. Akira knew that if the squid managed to bite him, it would be fatal. Desperation and fear surged through him as he reached for his harpoon gun. With the tentacles still wrapped tightly around him, Akira aimed the harpoon at the squid's head, just above its eyes. He pulled the trigger, and the harpoon shot forward, embedding itself in the squid's flesh. The creature recoiled in pain, its grip loosening slightly. Akira took the opportunity to twist free, using all his strength to break away from the tentacles. But the squid wasn't done yet. It lashed out again, this time wrapping its tentacles around Akira's torso, squeezing with terrifying force. The pressure was unbearable, and Akira could feel his ribs straining under the force. He struggled to breathe as the tentacles tightened, pulling him closer to the beak. In a final act of desperation, Akira reached for the knife strapped to his leg. With a swift motion, he slashed at the tentacles, cutting deep into the squid's flesh. The creature thrashed wildly, releasing Akira as it recoiled in pain. Akira pushed himself away, using his legs to propel himself backward. The squid, now bleeding and disoriented, retreated into the darkness, its tentacles trailing behind it. Akira's breathing was ragged, his body bruised and battered from the encounter. He knew he didn't have much time. His oxygen was running low, and he was still deep in the trench. He quickly checked his gear, making sure nothing was damaged, and began his ascent. The journey back to the surface felt agonizingly slow. Every minute seemed like an eternity as Akira fought to stay conscious. The pain in his chest was intense, and he could feel the cold seeping into his bones. But he kept moving, focusing on the light above him, the promise of safety. Finally, after what felt like hours, Akira broke through the surface. The cold air hit his face, and he gasped for breath, his body trembling from the exertion. The dive boat was waiting for him, and his colleagues quickly pulled him aboard, their faces pale with worry. Akira collapsed onto the deck, his body too weak to move. He could hear his colleagues talking, their voices filled with concern, but his mind was elsewhere. The encounter with the giant squid had shaken him to his core. He had come face to face with a creature of legend, and it had nearly cost him his life. It was February 2024, and Alex, an experienced diver, was exploring the underwater caves off the coast of Okinawa, Japan. Alex, a 34-year-old San Diego, California marine biologist, had been diving for over a decade. His passion for the ocean began as a child, inspired by family trips to the beach and documentaries about marine life. Alex had always been fascinated by the underwater world. He loved the sense of peace and wonder of diving and the thrill of discovering new creatures and ecosystems. His work as a marine biologist allowed him to combine his love for the ocean with his desire to protect it. Alex had a deep respect for the sea and its inhabitants, understanding both its beauty and danger. On this particular day, Alex was eager to explore the underwater caves of Okinawa, known for their stunning rock formations and diverse marine life. He prepared his equipment carefully, making sure everything was in perfect condition. He checked his oxygen tanks, diving suit, and most importantly, his diving knife, which he always carried for safety. The weather was perfect for diving. The sea was calm and the visibility underwater was excellent. Alex entered the water, feeling the familiar rush of excitement as he descended into the depths. The caves were a labyrinth of narrow passages and hidden chambers, each promising discovery. As Alex navigated the underwater maze, he marveled at the vibrant coral reefs and the colorful fish that darted around him. He took his time, enjoying the serenity and beauty of the underwater world. The light from his underwater torch illuminated the cave walls, revealing intricate patterns and hidden creatures. After several hours of exploring, Alex found himself in a particularly narrow passage. He moved cautiously, aware of the limited space and potential dangers. Suddenly, he felt a strong, unexpected pull. Turning around, he came face to face with a giant Pacific octopus. Feeling threatened by his presence, the creature wrapped its powerful tentacles around him. Alex's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. The octopus's grip was firm, pulling him deeper into the cave. His serene dive had quickly turned into a fight for survival. Alex knew he had to act fast. He reached for his diving knife, determined to free himself from the octopus's clutches. The struggle was intense. The octopus's tentacles tightened around him, and Alex could feel the pressure increasing. He used his knife to carefully cut the tentacles, trying not to harm the creature more than necessary. His training and experience as a diver were put to the test as he fought to free himself. Despite the fear and tension, Alex remained focused. His determination and skill paid off as he managed to sever enough tentacles to loosen the octopus's grip. He kicked his fins powerfully, breaking free from the creature's hold and swimming towards the surface. The encounter had left him shaken but also filled with a newfound respect for the ocean's enigmatic creatures. Alex swam quickly towards the surface, his heart still pounding from the encounter with the octopus. The sunlight filtering through the water guided him upward. He could see the blue sky above, a welcome sight after the tense struggle in the dark cave. Alex took deep breaths as he broke through the surface, filling his lungs with fresh air. He was relieved to be out of immediate danger, but knew he needed to get back to the boat and assess his situation. The dive boat was anchored a short distance away, bobbing gently on the calm waters off the coast of Okinawa. Alex swam towards it, feeling the exhaustion from the ordeal setting in. His muscles ached, and his mind was racing with the events unfolding. He reached the boat and climbed aboard, grateful for its stability and safety. Once on the boat, Alex took a moment to rest and gather his thoughts. He checked his gear, ensuring nothing was damaged during the struggle with the octopus. His diving knife, crucial in his escape, was still in good condition. He always made a mental note to carry it, no matter how routine a dive might seem. As he sat on the boat, Alex reflected on the encounter. He realized how close he had come to severe injury, or worse. The giant Pacific octopus, a creature he had always admired from a distance, had shown him the raw power and unpredictability of the ocean. He deeply respected marine life, but this experience reinforced the importance of caution and preparedness. After resting, Alex decided to head back to shore. He started the boat's engine and navigated towards the Okinawa coastline. The ride was smooth, giving him time to process the day's events. He thought about how important it was to share this experience with others, especially those who might underestimate the dangers of diving. Reaching the shore, Alex docked the boat and began unloading his gear. The dive shop staff noticed his severe demeanor and asked if everything was all right. Alex assured them he was fine, but briefly shared his encounter with the octopus. They listened intently, aware of the risks of diving in such areas. Alex drove back to his hotel, replaying the events in his mind. The encounter had left a lasting impression on him. He knew he would continue diving, but with even greater respect for the ocean's inhabitants. He decided to write about his experience, hoping to educate others about the importance of safety and awareness in the water. In the following days, Alex took time to rest and recover. He visited local sites in Okinawa, enjoying the island's beauty while reflecting on his adventure. The serene beaches and vibrant culture starkly contrasted with his intense underwater experience. As he prepared to leave Okinawa, Alex felt a sense of gratitude. The experience, though harrowing, had taught him valuable lessons about the ocean and himself. He had faced a dangerous situation and came out more robust, with a renewed respect for the sea. Alex knew he would carry these lessons with him on all his future dives, always remembering the giant Pacific octopus and the day his serene dive turned into a battle for survival. In the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, the annual Antigua Sailing Week Regatta was in full swing. It was May 10, 2010, and the sun was high in the sky, casting a brilliant glow over the sea. The regatta was a prestigious event, attracting skilled sailors from around the world. The race course was set around the island of Antigua, known for its stunning beaches and perfect sailing conditions. One of the competing boats, the Sea Falcon, was crewed by a close-knit group of friends: Ben Turner, Maria Lewis, Chris Douglas, and Lily Harper. They had been sailing together for years, and their teamwork had been honed through countless races and adventures. The mood on the Sea Falcon was one of excitement and determination as they navigated the course, aiming for a top finish. The morning had been perfect for sailing. The wind was steady, and the sea was calm. Ben, the captain, stood at the helm, guiding the boat with a practiced hand. Maria and Chris worked the sails with precision, while Lily kept a sharp lookout for other competitors. They had a good start and were making excellent time, with the boat cutting smoothly through the water. Mako sharks, known for their speed and agility, inhabited these waters. These powerful predators could grow up to 12 feet long and were known for their sudden, aggressive behavior. While encounters with boats were rare, the potential for danger always existed, adding an element of unpredictability to the race. As the Sea Falcon rounded a buoy and headed for the next leg of the race, the crew noticed a slight disturbance in the water behind them. At first, they thought it was just the wake of the boat, but the disturbance grew more pronounced. Lily, from her vantage point, squinted at the water, trying to make out the source. Suddenly, a sleek, dark shape emerged, moving with alarming speed. It was a large Mako shark drawn by the boat's wake. The shark began to circle the Sea Falcon, its movements fluid and deliberate. The crew's initial curiosity quickly turned to concern as the shark's behavior became more aggressive. It started ramming the hull, each impact sending shudders through the boat. Ben called for everyone's attention, the gravity of the situation sinking in. They had to think quickly. The shark's strikes were powerful, causing significant damage to the hull. Water began to seep in, and the once calm and controlled environment of the boat turned chaotic. The crew scrambled to assess the damage and come up with a plan. Abandoning a ship in open water with a predator circling was a terrifying thought, but staying on board a sinking vessel was equally dire. Ben tried to steer the boat away, hoping to outmaneuver the shark, but the creature was relentless, its predatory instincts fully engaged. The tension on the Sea Falcon was palpable. Each crew member focused on their task, trying to keep the boat afloat and avoid further provocation from the shark. They needed to send a distress call to the other competitors and rescue teams, but communication in the chaos proved challenging. Maria grabbed the radio, her hands shaking as she tried to get a signal out. The minutes felt like hours as the shark continued its assault, the boat groaning with each hit. The Sea Falcon's situation grew increasingly dire as the Mako shark's relentless attacks continued. The hull was taking on more water, and the crew's options were dwindling. Ben's mind raced as he tried to balance steering the boat and keeping his crew safe. The shark showed no signs of leaving. Its aggressive behavior turned their race into a nightmare. Maria finally managed to get a distress call out, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. She relayed their coordinates and the nature of their emergency, hoping that nearby boats or rescue teams would hear them and respond quickly. The radio crackled with acknowledgments, giving the crew a sliver of hope amid the chaos. Chris and Lily worked frantically to patch the hull, using whatever materials they could find. Their hands moved quickly, their faces set with determination. Every impact from the shark felt like a countdown, each second precious. Ben steered the boat in erratic patterns, trying to confuse the sharks and buy them more time. The shark made a particularly vicious strike, nearly throwing Ben off balance. The crew held their breath as the boat lurched, the shark's fin slicing through the water with deadly precision. Ben regained control, but the strain was evident on his face. He knew they couldn't keep this up much longer. Suddenly, a response came over the radio. A nearby competitor, the Windrider, had heard their distress call and was heading their way. The news brought a surge of relief, but they knew they still had to hold on until help arrived. The Windrider's captain, aware of the danger, coordinated with the Sea Falcon, planning a rescue operation on the move. The Windrider approached at full speed, its crew ready for action. The sight of the approaching boat gave the Sea Falcon's crew a renewed sense of hope. Ben communicated with the Windrider's captain, laying out a plan to transfer his crew safely. It was a risky maneuver, but they had no other choice. As the Windrider drew alongside the Sea Falcon, the shark's behavior grew even more aggressive. It rammed the boat with such force that water sprayed into the air. Ben knew they had to act fast. He gave the signal, and Chris and Lily moved towards the edge, ready to jump to the safety of the Windrider. The transfer was fraught with tension. Chris made it across first, leaping onto the Windrider's deck with agility. Lily followed, her heart pounding as she jumped, landing safely with the help of the Windrider's crew. Maria was next, her nerves on edge but her movements sure. Finally, it was Ben's turn. He took one last look at the Sea Falcon, then jumped, landing hard on the Windrider's deck. With the crew safely aboard, the Windrider sped away, putting distance between them and the enraged shark. The Sea Falcon, now abandoned, continued to take on water, the shark still circling it. The crew watched in silence, their hearts heavy with the loss of their boat but grateful for their safety. It was January 2024, and Karen and her teenage son Ethan were on a yacht in the Gulf of Mexico. Karen, a 45-year-old businesswoman from Houston, Texas, had planned this trip to reconnect with her family. She had been working long hours, and her relationship with Ethan had become strained. Ethan, 16, was a bright but rebellious teenager. He felt neglected by his mother and often acted out to get her attention. Karen had always been a strong and determined woman. She built her business from the ground up and prided herself on success. However, her dedication to her work often came at the expense of her family. On the other hand, Ethan struggled with his mother's lack of attention. He loved the ocean and enjoyed the freedom it offered. But this trip felt like just another attempt by his mother to control him. The yacht trip was meant to be a relaxing getaway. Karen hoped some time on the water would help heal their rift. The Gulf of Mexico seemed perfect for a family vacation with its clear blue waters and warm weather. They were accompanied by a small crew there to ensure the trip went smoothly. The sun shone brightly on January 15th, and the sea was calm. The yacht gently rocked on the waves as the family enjoyed the beautiful day. However, an argument between Karen and Ethan soon shattered the peaceful atmosphere. The tension between them had been building for days, finally reaching a boiling point. As the argument escalated, Karen's frustration grew. In a moment of anger, she lost control and pushed Ethan overboard. The sound of the splash as Ethan hit the water brought Karen back to her senses, and she immediately realized the gravity of her actions. Her anger turned to horror as she saw her son struggling in the water. Karen didn't know that their area was known for its shark activity. Many sharks, including blacktips, are often drawn to water disturbances in the Gulf of Mexico. The commotion attracted several sharks as Ethan splashed, trying to stay afloat. The crew and the rest of the family quickly sprang into action. They threw life rings into the water and used poles to fend off the approaching sharks. In a state of panic, Ethan struggled to reach the life rings. Seeing the sharks closing in on her son filled Karen with dread and regret. She knew she had to act fast to save him. Ethan's desperate struggle in the water and the family's frantic efforts to rescue him highlighted the grave consequences of Karen's moment of recklessness. The situation had turned from a family argument into a life-threatening emergency, with Ethan's survival hanging in the balance. Ethan thrashed in the water, his fear growing as he saw the dark shapes of the sharks circling closer. The crew and family on the yacht worked frantically to save him. They threw life rings into the water, shouting instructions and encouragement. But the sharks were fast and determined. The Gulf of Mexico, known for its vibrant marine life, had become dangerous for Ethan. One of the crew members used a long pole to keep the sharks at bay, pushing them away whenever they got too close. The rest of the family, including Karen, leaned over the side of the yacht, trying to reach Ethan with more life rings and ropes. The situation was dire, and every second counted. Ethan kicked and splashed, trying to keep the sharks away from him. His energy was draining quickly, and he felt the exhaustion setting in. He reached for one of the life rings but missed it by inches. The sharks, sensing his struggle, grew more aggressive. Their sleek bodies moved swiftly through the water, closing the distance with alarming speed. Karen's heart pounded as she saw the danger her son was in. Her mind raced, filled with guilt and fear. She grabbed another life ring and threw it as far as possible, praying that Ethan could reach it. The crew continued to fend off the sharks with poles and anything else they could find. Ethan saw the life ring land a few feet away and mustered the last of his strength to swim toward it. He could feel the sharks brushing against his legs, their presence a constant threat. He reached the life ring and clung to it, his arm shaking with fatigue. The crew began to pull him towards the yacht, their faces tense with concentration. As Ethan was pulled closer to the yacht, the sharks continued their pursuit. The crew worked together, using the poles to create a barrier between Ethan and the sharks. Slowly but steadily, they managed to bring him closer to the yacht's safety. Karen watched with bated breath, her eyes never leaving her son. Finally, Ethan was within reach. The crew grabbed his arms and pulled him onto the yacht, away from the dangerous waters. He collapsed onto the deck, gasping for breath and shivering with fear and cold. The family and crew quickly wrapped him in blankets, checking him for injuries. He had a few scrapes and bruises, but was otherwise unharmed. Karen fell to her knees beside Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. The reality of what had happened hit her hard. She had almost lost her son because of a moment of anger. The crew and family members surrounded them, offering comfort and support. They were all relieved that Ethan was safe, but the gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone. The yacht turned back towards the nearest port, heading to Clearwater, Florida. The crew contacted the authorities to report the incident and to arrange for medical assistance upon arrival. As they returned, the family stayed close to Ethan, ensuring he was warm and comfortable. The incident served as a harsh lesson for Karen and her family. The waters of the Gulf of Mexico, while beautiful, were not to be taken lightly. Karen's reckless action had nearly cost her son his life. The family vowed to be more careful in the future and always respect nature's power. Ethan's ordeal became a story that would be told many times, serving as a reminder of the importance of staying calm and thinking clearly in moments of crisis. His bravery and the crew's quick actions saved his life. The experience brought the family closer, making them appreciate the value of every moment spent together. In the summer of 2003, Julia Simmons, a 28-year-old travel enthusiast, arrived in the Maldives for what she hoped would be a dream vacation. The Maldives, with its crystal-clear waters, vibrant coral reefs, and an abundance of marine life, had always been at the top of her travel list. For Julia, an avid snorkeler and lover of the ocean, this was an opportunity to explore one of the world's most stunning underwater landscapes. The day began perfectly. Julia and a few other tourists from her resort boarded a small boat that took them to a secluded snorkeling spot, far from the crowds. The group was guided by an experienced local named Ahmed, who had been diving in these waters for years. He assured them that the reef they were visiting was one of the most beautiful in the area, with an incredible variety of fish and coral. Julia couldn't wait to get into the water. As the boat approached the snorkeling site, Julia could see the reef below, a colorful tapestry of corals, swaying sea anemones and darting fish. The water was so clear that she could make out every detail, even from the surface. After a brief safety briefing from Ahmed, the group began to gear up. Julia double-checked her mask, snorkel, and fins, making sure everything was secure. She had snorkeled many times before, but the excitement of exploring a new reef always brought a sense of anticipation. Once in the water, Julia was immediately mesmerized. The reef was even more beautiful than she had imagined. Schools of parrotfish, angelfish, and clownfish moved gracefully among the corals, while the occasional sea turtle glided by, seemingly unbothered by the presence of humans. The underwater world was alive with color and motion, and Julia felt as though she had entered a different realm. As the group moved along the edge of the reef, Julia noticed a large, dark crevice nestled between two coral formations. It was deeper than the other nooks she had seen, and something about it piqued her curiosity. Julia knew that many marine creatures made their homes in such crevices, and she wondered what might be hiding in this one. Perhaps a shy octopus or maybe even a small reef shark. While the rest of the group continued, Julia lingered behind, drawn to the mystery of the dark crevice. She approached slowly, peering into the shadows, her heart beating a little faster with the thrill of discovery. At first, she saw nothing but darkness, but then, as her eyes adjusted, she caught a glimpse of something moving within the crevice, a large, sinuous shape that seemed to flow with the currents. It was a moray eel, a creature Julia had only seen in documentaries. Moray eels were known for their long, snake-like bodies and powerful jaws, filled with sharp teeth. They were solitary animals, often hiding in crevices and caves, waiting for unsuspecting prey to come too close. Julia knew that while these eels could be aggressive if provoked, they usually posed little threat to divers and snorkelers who kept their distance. Fascinated, Julia hovered in the water watching the eel as it moved within its lair. The creature was larger than she had expected, its body extending far back into the crevice. Its head, with its menacing eyes and wide mouth, protruded slightly from the opening. Julia wanted to get a better look, and without thinking, she reached out toward a nearby piece of coral to steady herself as she floated closer. As Julia's hand moved closer to the coral, the moray eel reacted swiftly. Mistaking her movement for the approach of a predator, or perhaps prey, it shot out of its hiding place with lightning speed. Before Julia could comprehend what was happening, The eel's powerful jaws clamped down on her outstretched arm. The pain was immediate and intense as the eel's sharp teeth sank deep into her flesh. The creature's grip was unyielding, its body thrashing in the water as it tried to pull her further into the crevice. Julia's initial shock quickly turned into panic as she realized the danger she was in. The clear, peaceful waters of the Maldives had suddenly become a scene of terror. Julia struggled against the eel's grip, desperately trying to free herself. She kicked her legs, trying to push away from the crevice. But the eel was strong, its body coiling around her arm as it attempted to drag her closer. Every movement sent waves of pain shooting through her arm, and the water around her began to cloud with blood. The other snorkelers, who were now several meters ahead, hadn't noticed Julia's distress. She was alone, trapped in a battle with a creature that seemed determined not to let her go. Julia knew she had to act quickly. If the eel succeeded in pulling her into its lair, she might not make it out. With her free hand, Julia fumbled for the small dive knife she kept strapped to her leg. Her mind raced as she tried to remember her training and the survival tips she had read about underwater encounters. She knew she had to aim for the eel's head, its most vulnerable spot. The knife felt small and inadequate in her hand, but it was her only chance. Summoning all her strength, Julia struck at the eel's head, trying to hit it in the eyes or the snout. The eel thrashed even more violently in response, but the blows seemed to have some effect. Its grip on her arm loosened slightly, and Julia took the opportunity to pull away. She kicked furiously, pushing herself back from the crevice as the eel continued to writhe in the water. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the eel released its hold on Julia's arm. She pushed herself away from the reef, blood streaming from the deep wounds in her arm. The pain was overwhelming, but adrenaline kept her moving. She had to get away from the eel and get to safety before it attacked again. With her injured arm held close to her chest, Julia swam towards the group, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. The other snorkelers, finally realizing something was wrong, turned back towards her, their faces showing shock and concern as they saw the blood in the water. Ahmed, the guide, was the first to reach her. He quickly assessed the situation, recognizing the severity of Julia's injuries. He signaled to the others to help get her out of the water and back to the boat. Julia's mind was in a haze, the pain and fear making it hard to think, but she followed Ahmed's lead, focusing on nothing but reaching the safety of the boat. The journey back to the boat was agonizingly slow. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain through Julia's body, and she could feel herself growing weaker. Ahmed and the others helped her onto the boat, where they quickly wrapped her arm in a makeshift bandage to stop the bleeding. The sight of her mangled arm, with deep puncture wounds and torn flesh, was almost too much to bear. Back on land, Julia was rushed to a nearby medical facility where doctors worked to clean and stitch her wounds. The attack had left her with deep scars, both physical and emotional. But Julia knew she had been lucky. Had the eel been more aggressive, or had she not managed to free herself, the outcome could have been far worse. 2009, Costa Rica's Pacific coastline was an adventurer's and nature lover's paradise. This country, famous for its lush rainforests and diverse wildlife, boasts scenic beaches and abundant marine life. Playa Grande was a tranquil, somewhat secluded beach, curving between dense jungle and rocky cliffs. Here, the avid kayaker Tom Everett would find his reprieve, stroking through cerulean waters in search of peace and an occasional adrenaline rush brought on by encounters with marine life. Tom was both an experienced kayaker and an amateur marine biologist. His passion for the ocean grew in childhood, influenced by stories about his fisherman grandfather. At 30, Tom had seen the world, exploring all kinds of shores and seas. Still, the waters of Costa Rica remained special for him. Late one July afternoon, Tom slid his bright yellow kayak onto the warm waters and easily paddled through the waves. The sun was high in the sky, casting a golden color on the water. There were only the rhythmical sounds of the paddle slapping the water and the faraway cries of seabirds. Tom didn't have any particular destination in mind. He liked the freedom associated with open waters. He paddled further out to sea and spotted something that didn't quite resemble flotsam. A dark shape bobbed on the surface, then disappeared beneath the waves. Intrigued, Tom paddled the kayak toward the object. As he got closer, the shape became more apparent, and his heart sank. It was a majestic sea turtle entangled in discarded fishing nets. It was the largest leatherback he had ever seen. This turtle had been around for a while, its shell heavily covered in barnacles and algae. The flippers were tied, and the turtle therefore wriggled to free itself, struggling more and more by the minute. He knew he needed to think fast. He carefully slid toward the turtle, knowing it would get quite agitated. As he bent over, his kayak rocked gently so he could examine the situation. The turtle's eyes met his, and there was a moment of silent understanding. Desperation and fear showed in his gaze. Tom reached into his kayak and pulled out a small utility knife he always carried for emergencies. He began cutting through the tangled nets as fast and carefully as possible. The turtle thrashed its powerful flippers, causing waves that threatened to capsize the kayak. Tom struggled to maintain his balance while his heart seemed to pound in his chest. He could feel the adrenaline and knew this was a chance he was taking, as any wrong move would land him in the water, putting him and the turtle in greater danger. Those minutes were like hours as Tom continued slicing up the nets. His hands were trembling with effort, and his forehead was streaming with sweat. The sun beat on his head relentlessly, and salt water stung in his eyes. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The turtle's life depended on him. Just as Tom thought he was succeeding, a particularly violent thrash from the turtle nearly toppled him. Water slashed over the sides as the kayak tilted precariously. He clutched the edge of the kayak with one hand to steady himself, while hanging grimly onto the knife. His muscles screamed at him in agony, but he shrugged off the burning and pressed on with some hitherto unknown inborn will to survive. The final net seemed to drop away after what appeared to be an eternity. A second, the freed turtle floated unmoving, unable to believe in its new freedom. Tom watched, amazed, as the creature slowly moved, testing its unbound flippers. Then with one mighty stroke it swam into the ocean's depths. Tom sat back in his kayak and started breathing heavily. Relief and pride overflowed in his veins. He had done it and saved the turtle. A sense of inexpressible joy accompanied him while he paddled back to the shore. The experience had been tiring, scary, and highly mind-racking, but it was one of the most rewarding moments in his life. Back on the beach, Tom told his tale to a few locals who had gathered around him. They listened intently, their faces a picture of disbelief mixed with admiration. Wildlife rescue stories weren't anything new in Costa Rica, but for one kayaker, to do so was out of the norm. For days afterward, Tom couldn't get the image of that turtle off his mind. He wondered if it had found its way to safety, and if it had reunited with its pod. The encounter impacted him and made him respect the ocean and its inhabitants more than ever. The word about Tom's story spread, and soon after a local conservation group contacted him. Having listened to his story, impressed by his courage and determination, they invited Tom to join the efforts to protect Costa Rica's marine life. Tom needed little convincing. He felt that this adventure had opened a new page of life for him. For the next couple of years, he worked indefatigably with the group involved in conserving the ocean and its creatures. Beach cleanups, rescue missions, and research projects. This experience also motivated Tom to write a book to share his story with the world and raise people's awareness about threats to marine life. The book, Kayakers Struggle with a Giant Sea Turtle, became an astonishing bestseller, touching the hearts of many people worldwide. He nurtured an excellent appreciation for the ocean and its creatures through his work and writing. He proved that one person can make a difference, that even small acts of kindness and bravery can make a big difference. Years later, that fateful day came to mind as he paddled along the Costa Rican coastline. He had not forgotten the turtle's eyes, frightened but hopeful, reminiscent of nature's beauty and the delicate balance of responsibility one has when being a part of it. From lonely kayaker to impassioned conservationist, Tom Everett's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance and compassion. He struggled with the giant sea turtle, which became defining and changed his life and that of many others. He knew he made a difference every time he set out on the water, one paddle stroke at a time. In the heart of the Amazon basin, the lush jungle teemed with life on every level. It was June 12, 2008, and a team of biologists had set up camp near a remote tributary of the Amazon River in Brazil. The dense forest, alive with the sounds of wildlife, provided an ideal backdrop for their research. Their mission was to study the aquatic ecosystem, cataloging the diverse species that thrived in the murky waters. The team comprised 4 members: Dr. Laura Collins, the lead biologist; Ethan Parker, a seasoned diver; Sophie Bennett, a young researcher passionate about aquatic life; and Sam Reed, an experienced diver and photographer. They had spent the morning preparing their equipment and discussing the day's objectives, eager to explore the underwater world. The waters of the Amazon basin were known to harbor a variety of dangerous creatures, including the electric eel. These eels could deliver shocks of up to 600 volts, enough to stun or even kill a human. While the team was aware of the risks, their enthusiasm for discovery outweighed their fears. They had taken all necessary precautions, but the unpredictable nature of the Amazon's waters was always a concern. As the sun climbed higher, casting dappled light through the thick canopy, the team donned their diving gear and entered the water. The tributary, though murky and filled with debris, promised a wealth of information. Laura led the way, followed by Ethan, Sophie, and Sam, each equipped with cameras and collection tools. The underwater world was a realm of shadows and hidden beauty. Schools of fish darted around and plants swayed gently in the current. The team moved slowly, careful not to disturb the delicate environment. They were focused, and their senses were attuned to every movement and sound. Sam, eager to capture the perfect shot, ventured slightly ahead of the group. His camera flashed as he documented the intricate details of the underwater flora and fauna. In his excitement, he failed to notice the large electric eel nestled among the rocks. The eel, feeling threatened by the intrusion, began to display signs of agitation. Without warning, the eel lunged, delivering a powerful electric shock directly to Sam. The impact was immediate and devastating. Sam's body convulsed, his muscles seizing up as the electric current surged through him. He lost consciousness, his limp form drifting in the water. The flash of the camera and the sudden commotion caught the attention of the rest of the team. Laura, Ethan, and Sophie turned in alarm, their hearts pounding as they saw Sam's body floating lifelessly. Panic surged through them, but training and instinct quickly took over. Laura motioned for Ethan and Sophie to stay back as she swam towards Sam, her mind racing with the need to act swiftly. The murky water made visibility poor, and the eel, still agitated, remained a threat. Laura reached Sam and checked for signs of life. His pulse was weak and he was unresponsive. She grabbed him, pulling him towards the surface with all her strength. The eel, sensing another intruder, delivered another shock, this time to Laura. Pain shot through her, but she fought to maintain her grip on Sam. Ethan and Sophie, watching in horror, knew they had to help. Ethan signaled Sophie to stay close as he swam towards Laura and Sam. The water around them seemed to churn with danger, and every movement was a potential trigger for another attack. Ethan reached them, and together, he and Laura struggled to bring Sam to the surface. As they broke through the surface, gasping for air, they saw the distant outline of their boat. The eel's shock had left them both disoriented and weak, but they knew they couldn't afford to stop. They signaled Sophie, who had stayed near the boat, to come closer and help. Sophie, seeing Laura and Ethan struggling with Sam, paddled the boat towards them as quickly as she could. The water around them felt ominous, the threat of the electric eel ever present. Sophie's heart raced as she reached out to help pull Sam aboard. Together, they lifted his unconscious body into the boat, their muscles straining with the effort. Once Sam was safely in the boat, Laura and Ethan scrambled aboard, their bodies still tingling from the eel's shocks. Laura immediately began administering first aid, checking Sam's vitals and ensuring he was breathing. His pulse was faint, but he was alive. They had to act fast to prevent any further complications from the electric shock. The team knew they had to get Sam back to camp, where they had better medical supplies. Sophie started the boat's engine and they sped towards the shore, the water churning behind them. The urgency of the situation hung heavy in the air, each second feeling like an eternity. As they neared the shore, the dense jungle loomed ahead, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just experienced. The team's camp was a short distance from the water's edge. They reached it quickly, carrying Sam to the medical tent with care. Laura and Ethan worked together, using their training to stabilize him and monitor his condition. The minutes stretched on as they waited for Sam to regain consciousness. The jungle around them buzzed with life, but within the tent it felt as though time had slowed to a crawl. Finally, Sam began to stir, his eyelids fluttering open. He was disoriented but alive, and the team let out a collective sigh of relief. While Sam rested, the team took a moment to reflect on the ordeal. The Amazon basin, with its beauty and mystery, had revealed its dangerous side. The electric eel's powerful shock had almost cost them a friend and colleague. They knew they had been lucky, and the experience underscored the need for greater caution in their work. The azure waters off the coast of Palau, an archipelago in the western Pacific Ocean, beckoned snorkelers and divers worldwide in 2007. Located 500 miles southeast of the Philippines, the tiny republic was popularly claimed to host some of the world's most pristine coral reefs and diverse marine life, with an equally rich maritime history and tribal traditions. The waters were full of colorful fish and brilliant coral formations, but held more dangerous deep denizens. A marine explorer, Emily Whitaker, was a great enthusiast of snorkeling. She had flown into Palau to get a feel of the underwater world. She was equipped with her swimming and snorkeling gear and an underwater camera, all set to capture the rich marine biodiversity in images that these waters were famous for. Leaving from the small, lively town of Koror, the morning sun danced off the water's surface as Emily paddled gently away from her rented boat. It was almost surreal, fine at that moment. Colored fish fleeing in and out of the coral and the sound of breathing rhythmically through the snorkel. She felt at peace, immersed in the beauty of the underwater world. Emily was a wary soul, always mindful that the ocean was as dangerous as beautiful. But the day was so glorious that for a moment her vigilance was laid down. She floated, mesmerized by the dazzling school of parrotfish, and did not see the almost ethereal, translucent creature drifting noiselessly closer. Mistakenly considered a jellyfish, the Portuguese man-o-war was a siphonophore, a colony of specialized minute individuals called zooids. A gas-filled bladder kept it afloat while its venomous tentacles trailed menacingly below, sometimes reaching lengths of 30 feet in length. Because she was swimming in snorkeling gear, her first view of the creature was through the distorted lens of her snorkel mask. The purple-blue hues, the delicate sail-like structure at the surface. She had seen other jellyfish and thought this was another variety of the harmless type. Interested by its appearance, she swam closer to it. It was not until she felt the first excruciating sting that she realized her mistake. The pain was sharp and instant in burning nature, like the firing of every single nerve in her body right off. She looked down in horror to see the long, twisted tentacles wrapping around her arm and leg. Panic surged through Emily as the venom began to take effect. Her muscles were contracting painfully. She struggled to move. She knew that the venom could cause paralysis, and if she didn't act quickly, she might not make it back to the boat. She began to kick and thrash about, using the last ounce of her strength to break free from the tentacles. The harder she struggled, the more tightly they seemed to hold her. She felt the venom spreading, the pain growing with each passing second. She had read about the effects of the venom of the Portuguese man-o-war. Severe pain, muscle cramps, and possibly respiratory distress. She weighed her options as her mind raced with thoughts. She knew she couldn't afford to pass out in the water. Emily grasped her snorkel knife, a small yet sharp blade she always carried just in case. With shaking hands, she began cutting at the tentacles wrapping around her. The knife slid through the slimy, almost translucent tendril, but every cut released more venom onto her skin. She screamed into her snorkel, the sound muffled into the water as she worked frenetically to end her tether. Finally, with one last, desperate slash, she cut through the final tentacles holding her. But the damage was done. Her body was racked with pain, and she could feel herself weakening. She turned toward her boat, now merely a speck on the horizon. Swimming was an agonizing effort in each stroke. Her vision blurred. She had heavy, lifeless limbs. She knew she had to keep moving and fighting, but the venom was relentless. Emily's struggle was overseen by David Ramirez, captain of the boat. From the deck, he had surveyed his passengers, and the frantic movements that were Emily stuck out in his sight. He grabbed his binoculars and witnessed a recognizable event. Frantic splashing and painful attempts to swim from running into a Portuguese man-o-war. David didn't hesitate for a moment. He fired up the boat and powered toward Emily, careful not to make too much of a wake and further frighten her. When he was close enough, he threw a life preserver into the water and shouted for her to hang on tight. Dazed, Emily saw the lifebuoy and summoned the last strength to reach it. David pulled her toward the boat, his heart pounded with urgency. Safely aboard, he looked at her angry welts and skin pallor. He knew she needed immediate medical attention. David radioed for help and zipped back to Koror. They rushed Emily to the nearest medical facility, where the doctors treated her for the stings and relief from pain. The poison was fast-acting, but swift care stabilized her. For the next few days, Emily replayed the near-death experience in her mind. It had been an eye-opener to the dangers at sea, even to very good snorkelers. She felt grateful to be alive and recognized that David's presence of mind saved her life. Emily Whitaker's encounter with the Portuguese man-o-war changed her life. It showed her how unpredictable the ocean could be, and that she needed always to be prepared and show respect. Her experience heightened her awareness and became a vital lesson within the snorkeling and diving community. The waters of Palau were as beautiful and inviting as ever, but to Emily, they held a deeper, more profound meaning. She had gone through the ocean's fury and emerged at the other end with a story that would remind everyone to tread with care in this mesmerizing yet dangerous underwater world. It was a bright, sunny afternoon in early December 2001 when the Mason family decided to spend a day at a beautiful beach near Gansbaai, South Africa. The beach, known for its stunning views and occasional dolphin sightings, was a popular spot for both locals and tourists. For 7-year-old Tommy Mason, the chance to see dolphins in the wild was the highlight of the trip. He had always been fascinated by marine life, and his parents, Peter and Sarah, were excited to share this experience with him. As the family arrived at the beach, the atmosphere was lively. People were swimming, playing in the sand, and enjoying the warm weather. The waves lapped gently at the shore, and the ocean stretched out in a vast expanse of blue. The Masons set up their spot near the water, laying out towels and unpacking a picnic. Tommy, full of energy and excitement, immediately began scanning the horizon for any sign of dolphins. He had seen dolphins in aquariums before, but the thought of seeing them in their natural habitat was something else entirely. As the afternoon wore on, Tommy played in the shallow water, building sandcastles and occasionally glancing out to sea, hoping to catch a glimpse of a dorsal fin. It wasn't long before Tommy's patience was rewarded. Out in the distance, he saw a fin break the surface of the water. His heart skipped a beat as he pointed excitedly towards it. Peter and Sarah looked up, following Tommy's gaze. They saw the fin, not too far from where the waves gently kissed the shore. It was moving slowly, lazily, as if drifting closer to the beach. Tommy, unable to contain his excitement, started wading into the water, his small feet splashing as he moved towards the fin. In his young mind, the fin belonged to a friendly dolphin, just like the ones he had seen in books and on television. But as he moved deeper into the water, the fin began to grow larger, and the shape beneath it more defined. The water around the fin darkened, and the playful image of a dolphin began to blur into something else, something far more dangerous. What Tommy didn't know, and what his parents were about to realize, was that this was no dolphin. It was a juvenile great white shark drawn to the shallow waters by the scent of fish and seals. Juvenile great whites, though smaller than their adult counterparts, were still formidable predators, and this one, curious and inexperienced, was about to make a terrifying mistake. As Tommy moved closer, calling out in hopes of getting the dolphin's attention, the shark began to circle. Its sleek body moved with the natural grace of a predator, but to Tommy, it seemed like the playful dance of a friendly creature. The shark, still learning how to hunt, was drawn to the boy's splashing, mistaking it for the erratic movements of prey. Back on shore, Peter and Sarah watched their son with growing unease. Something about the fin seemed off. Its shape was more angular, and its movements were more calculated. The realization hit Sarah first, a sudden wave of dread washing over her. She called him to get out, her voice filled with panic. Peter was already on his feet, running towards the water's edge, but he knew he was too far to reach his son in time. As Tommy continued wading deeper into the water, oblivious to the danger he was in, the shark moved closer, its curiosity turning into a predatory focus. The boy's small frame and playful splashes were too much for the shark to ignore. The great white, still inexperienced but driven by instinct, decided to investigate further. The water around Tommy began to ripple as the shark circled him, its dorsal fin cutting through the surface just a few feet away. By now, Tommy could see the full size of the creature beneath the waves, and the realization that this was no dolphin finally struck him. Fear gripped his heart as he saw the massive shape below him, but before he could react, the shark closed in. Back on the shore, Peter was desperately trying to reach his son, his legs pumping through the water as fast as they could. Sarah's screams echoed in his ears, but all he could focus on was the sight of his son standing frozen in the water, just inches away from the shark. In a split second, the shark made its move. It darted forward, its jaws open, ready to bite down on what it thought was easy prey. But just as it was about to strike, a lifeguard who had been watching the scene unfold from a distance sprang into action. He grabbed a rescue board and paddled furiously towards Tommy, adrenaline surging through his veins. The shark's fin cut through the water, coming closer and closer. Tommy was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or cry out. But just as the shark was within striking distance, the lifeguard reached him, pulling him onto the rescue board with a swift, practiced motion. The shark, startled by the sudden commotion and the lifeguard's aggressive movements, veered off course. Its powerful body brushed against the board, and for a moment it seemed like it might still attack. But the lifeguard, using his experience and training, kept the board between the shark and the boy, paddling back towards the shore with all his strength. Peter finally reached them as they neared the shallow water, grabbing his son and helping the lifeguard pull the board to safety. The shark, confused and perhaps realizing its mistake, swam off into deeper waters, its shadow fading into the blue. On the beach, Sarah ran to meet them, tears streaming down her face as she wrapped her arms around Tommy. The boy, still in shock, clung to his mother, his small body trembling. The beach, once filled with the sounds of laughter and waves, was now silent, the weight of what had nearly happened sinking in. Tommy was safe, but the close encounter had shaken everyone. The beachgoers who had watched from a distance now gathered, whispering about the near tragedy they had just witnessed. The lifeguard, his heart still pounding, stood with the family, assuring them that the danger had passed. Jake couldn't believe his luck. The waves off Jeffreys Bay, South Africa's coast, were pumping today. The 28-year-old surf instructor had scored the conditions of a lifetime, glassy 6-foot barrels peeling perfectly along the point break known as super tubes. It was midsummer in the Southern Hemisphere in 2010. Jake had surfed Jeffreys Bay many times before but rarely saw it, epically uncrowded and firing on all cylinders like this. Most of the usual crews of locals were gone, chasing the rumors further down the coast to another equally famous reef near Cape St. Francis that often handled the biggest, most prime south swells. But Jake didn't mind having super tubes virtually to himself on that day. Just a short time after, in his black 4/3 wetsuit with sunscreen slathered on, Jake waxed up his favorite 6'3" thruster and walked down to the water's edge. He stopped momentarily, checking the lineup carefully for marine life before heading out through the churning whitewash. It was just a bit after 11 a.m., and the offshore southwesterly winds were still light and glassy, giving way to ideal surf at that size. 15 minutes later, Jake was sitting pretty in the lineup, casually treading water for the first few minutes approximately 200 meters offshore, waiting patiently for his next set wave. The ocean looked just incredible today. The sapphire surface was otherwise unblemished, save for the distant ripples Jake made and the little gulls cruising by. On his third wave, with the emerald green wall dropping to his left, Jake rode it in style, disappearing into the barrel for 2 seconds before kicking out. After being spit out from the giant tube, he couldn't wipe the smile off his face, so he paddled back to the peak for another go. Only after about 20 or so waves over the next hour did Jake get a slight ache in his arms and back from all the paddling against the current. He figured he had enough surf for one day anyway. Besides, the tide was coming in, and what had once been glassy was getting choppier and blown out. Jake kicked out of one last wave and started his long, stiff paddle back into shore, a few hundred meters out. A prominent shadowy figure gracefully patrolled the depths about 15 feet from him. Jake stopped and steadied to get a perfect look. That's when his heart jumped into his mouth because a giant bull shark with the telltale oblong snout and stocky body broke the surface, sending a wake of frothy brown browsers churning. Bull sharks were sufficiently common in these waters off South Africa during the late spring and summer months when the waters warmed up. But attacks were still sufficiently rare for most surfers. These combative members of the Requiem shark family were notoriously ill-tempered compared to their oceanic white-tip or black-tip reef cousins. The bull shark had scented him out and was turning back on him for a closer inspection. An eye now balefully flashed, mistaking Jake's black wetsuit and tiny paddling motion for the shadow of a seal. He could feel his heart banging in his chest as his eyes flicked back towards the distant shoreline, still hundreds of meters away. That was most definitely not good. Jake, empathizing with his surf instructor training, knew that the worst thing to do was panic or make any sudden erratic movement that could provoke an attack. The bull shark was now coming out of the back surf zone. A dorsal fin knifed through the surface about 20 meters away, making a beeline straight towards Jake. Time stood still as Jake made an ageless effort to carefully shift his prone body, so that he now faced the shark head-on, only to see the cold, lifeless obsidian orbs and attempted to backpaddle ever so cautiously to the safety of the shallows. The 4-meter bull shark turned briefly, showing its thick flanks and powerful tail, before it glided to coast just a dozen feet away from the surfboard under Jake. Its small, beady eyes looked razor-sharp, no doubt taking in every single kick and splash Jake made. Jake was trying very hard to keep his almost chronic body and limbs under control, to be as still and non-threatening as he possibly could. He certainly did not want to provoke an attack by wildly splashing about. The bull shark edged Jake, menacingly closing in around him, the dark dorsal fins searing out of the water's skin like a menacing periscope. Jake felt his heart beating out of his chest as he tried to backpaddle toward the shallows, with all the nonchalance he could muster. Every few seconds, the shark would drop under and reappear closer than before, assessing Jake from a new angle. Jake knew he would resist the urge to panic and thrash around, which would surely set the shark into hunting mode. It reminded him to move slowly and with purpose. After what seemed an eternity, the shark began to lose interest as its circling radius widened slightly when it kicked up its tail for more powerful bursts of speed. Then the vast bull shark did much more of a corkscrewing tight turn as if setting up for an attack run, and Jake had his stomach drop away again as the beast's thrashing tail funneled it directly at him at ramming speed. He screwed his eyes tightly closed and turned his head away, bracing for the bone-crushing impact. Just as a last moment, it sheared off and continued circling, just out of range of the defense. Breathing hard through his nose, Jake opened his eyes and realized that the snapping he thought the shark was preparing for was more like a feint, setting up a series of moves to gauge his reaction. He knew he couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Remaining completely still like a statue, Jake continued his harrowingly slow back paddle, inching toward the safety of the whitewater shore break. His arms shook from lactic strain, aching with every movement, as he fought to stay calm and focused. After what felt like an eternity, Jake finally felt the leash line go taut on the shallow sandbar, allowing him to attempt to stand. He slowly and carefully got his feet beneath him on the hard-packed sand and began standing up in the swirling shore break. The bull shark continued to stalk nearby, making a few passes as if acting like a sentry. Jake's breath caught in his throat each time the telltale dorsal fin disappeared beneath the surface, unsure if the shark was giving up the chase or lying in ambush. He reached a standing depth after a few tense minutes of navigating the shifting shoreline without taking his eyes off the shark. He then began furiously body surfing over the remaining waves without thinking, occasionally glancing back at the shark. Finally, Jake's feet struck the solid sand of the beach, and he broke into a full sprint, not stopping until he was at least 100 yards from the water's edge. Turning to face the ocean, he squinted into the afternoon glare, trying to catch his breath. The bull shark had paused, abandoned the chase, and swum in another direction. Jake's knees gave way with the release. The gravity of how close he'd come to an attack sunk in. He held his board and gear and set the long walk up the beach toward the car, his head still reeling from the encounter. When he returned to the house that evening, Jake grabbed a glass of wine, sat down, and wrote each detail of the day's events in his journal. Over the following weeks, Jake reran that experience repeatedly in his head. Although he was beyond grateful not to be hurt, he was shaken. It made him jumpy, settling into future surfing sessions with a watchful look at the ocean's depths. That near-death experience with the bull shark was a wake-up call for him as to how fragile life could be. From then forward, he resolved to avoid any unnecessary risks. The power of the ocean was to be respected. One sweaty day in 2013, Jack Mayfield and his two friends, Reginald Butters and Edgar Simmons, launched from the coast for a ritualistic annual fishing trip in the Gulf of Mexico. The trio of retirees had been friends inseparably since boyhood, brought together by the sea and its secrets and their curiosity. That year, the trio was bent on catching a grand prize that would gape the mouths of their next-generation successors. The three had decided to embark on their escapade from the beautiful coastal town of Biloxi, Mississippi. Its historical fishing legacy was quite commendable. One could not help enjoying the serenity as they steered through the shimmering waters on their relatively small but decently kept boat. The slight memory lane effect was vivid, thinking of the many such outings they had done when they were still young. Hours slid lazily and the men received some catches. Nothing out of this world. Reginald was there to assure them that their luck was about to turn. Little did they realize that what was lying ahead would push their friendship and personal endurance to the limit. Edgar's fishing line suddenly tightened, and his exclamation indicated a feeling that he was in for a big catch. Jack and Reginald rushed to his side, their hearts thudding at the prospect of a chase. As Edgar began to draw in his catch, the boat lurched so violently that it nearly pitched the men into the water. Whatever was on the other end of that line was pulling with a pressure they had never seen. Jack held onto the railing for all he was worth, and Reginald braced himself on the cabin's wall. Edgar grunted with surprise and told them this was no ordinary fish they had hooked. Then they saw a vast, graceful manta ray breaching the surface, its enormous wingspan-like fins casting a shadow over their vessel. They had caught one of the gentle giants of the ocean by mistake. The manta ray began to thrash and twist, rocking the boat back and forth with its powerful movements. Jack scrambled to the stern with a knife, ready to cut the line if necessary. Meanwhile, Reginald rushed to the helm to maintain control of the vessel amidst the chaos. Edgar, however, hung tight to the fishing rod. He would not let this be another challenge he lost. Gritting his teeth and digging his heels into the deck, he pulled back with all his might. It was a tug-of-war, a manta ray versus friends. Their boat zigzagged on the water as they struggled to control its actions. He suddenly slackened the line and the manta ray disappeared into the depths. The two men gasped for breath and dripped sweat. They looked at each other rather confusedly, their hearts still in their mouths. Jack couldn't resist laughing and commenting that they had some fish stories to tell their grandkids. Reginald shook his head wryly before he commented the creature was more significant than his first car. Edgar grinned with pride, claiming no fish would get the better of them as kings of the waters. The three friends burst into laughter. The bond of camaraderie had just become thicker. Paddling back to the shore, the strength and elegance of the manta ray reminded them of the beauty of the ocean beneath. Thus, the ordeal was a story to be told for generations to come. It was a show of indestructible bonding between friends and a relationship of respect with sea creatures. In the summer of 2006, the wild and remote coast of Alaska was the scene for a guided kayak tour. On June 15th, a group of tourists gathered near Sitka, ready to embark on an adventure through the cold waters. The sky was clear, the air crisp, and spirits were high. The group consisted of Sarah Thompson, an adventurous traveler, Mark Davis, a nature enthusiast, Jenna Lee, a photographer, and Kevin Patel, a novice kayaker. Their guide, Jake Williams, was an experienced kayaker with a deep knowledge of the local wildlife. The Alaskan coast was home to a variety of marine life, including the powerful Steller sea lion. These animals could weigh up to 2,500 pounds and were known for their territorial behavior, especially the males. Encounters with these sea lions could be unpredictable, particularly during the mating season when the bulls were on high alert. The tour started smoothly as the group paddled out, enjoying the scenic views of towering cliffs and dense forests. The water was calm and the group moved leisurely, taking in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. Sarah and Mark chatted excitedly, pointing out different birds and sea otters they saw along the way. Jenna was busy capturing the stunning landscape with her camera while Kevin paddled nervously but kept close to Jake. who led the way. As they rounded a rocky outcrop, the group spotted a large colony of sea lions basking on the sun-warmed rocks. The sight was mesmerizing. Dozens of sea lions lay sprawled out, their sleek bodies glistening in the sunlight. Jake signaled for the group to keep a safe distance, and they quietly observed the animals, careful not to disturb them. The sea lions seemed at ease, some lazily stretching while others barked and played in the water. The tourists were captivated by the scene, enjoying this rare glimpse into the lives of these impressive creatures. Jake explained the behavior of the sea lions, sharing his knowledge with the group, who listened intently. Among the colony was a large bull sea lion, clearly the dominant male. He watched the kayakers with a wary eye, his massive head lifting occasionally to sniff the air. The bull's presence commanded respect, and Jake reminded the group to remain calm and avoid making sudden movements. The group continued to observe the sea lions, unaware that their presence was starting to agitate the bull. Suddenly, the bull sea lion let out a deep, resonant roar, a clear warning. The peaceful atmosphere shifted as the bull perceived the kayaks as a threat to his territory. Before anyone could react, the bull lunged into the water, swimming directly toward the group with alarming speed. The bull sea lion's sudden charge sent a wave of panic through the group. The massive animal rammed into Kevin's kayak first, capsizing it and sending him into the frigid water. The impact was powerful and Kevin struggled to stay afloat, the shock of the cold water taking his breath away. Sarah and Mark tried to paddle away, but the bull was relentless. It circled back, ramming into Mark's kayak next, flipping it over with ease. Mark surfaced, gasping for air, his face a mix of fear and determination. Jenna, too, was targeted. Her kayak wobbled precariously before the bull struck it, tossing her into the water. Jake remained calm under pressure, quickly assessing the situation. He knew they needed to regroup and find a way to reach the shore safely. The sea lion's aggression showed no signs of waning, and every second in the water increased the risk of hypothermia. Jake paddled towards Kevin, reaching him just in time to help him stay above the water. He directed Kevin to hold onto the kayak. Kevin grabbed the edge, shivering but holding on tight. Jake then made his way to Mark and Jenna, who were doing their best to stay afloat amidst the chaos. He signaled for them to form a circle around his kayak. The group managed to gather around Jake, using his kayak as a makeshift raft. The bull sea lion continued to circle, its powerful body cutting through the water with ease. It made several more attempts to strike, but the tight formation seemed to confuse it. The sea lion's frustration was palpable, but Jake knew they couldn't let their guard down. Slowly, they began to paddle towards the shore, every movement calculated to avoid further provoking the bull. The journey was agonizingly slow, the cold water sapping their strength. The bull made another aggressive pass, splashing water over them, but Jake's calm instructions kept the group focused. After what felt like an eternity, they neared the rocky shore. The bull, sensing defeat, let out a final angry roar before retreating to the colony. Exhausted and relieved, the group struggled onto the rocks, their bodies shaking from the cold and adrenaline. The memory of the aggressive bull sea lion would stay with them forever, a powerful reminder of the raw, untamed nature of the world they had come to explore. And though the experience had been harrowing, it had also deepened their respect for the wild and their understanding of the delicate balance between human curiosity and the natural world's unpredictable forces. In the summer of 2015, the limpid waters of the small island of Curaçao, situated in the southern part of the Caribbean Sea, summoned thrill-seekers and nature enthusiasts worldwide. With its intense coral reefs and marine life, the island of Curaçao became a haven for divers and underwater photographers. They didn't know that nature's whims could turn a peaceful dive into a heart-pounding encounter just a few feet down the surface. Melissa Gibbs, a 32-year-old amateur diver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, had long since been driven by a passion to capture the underwater beauty of the Caribbean. Now equipped with her trusty underwater camera and the newly developed talent in marine photography, she hoped it would be the diving experience of a lifetime. One particular day, Melissa dove with a small group of divers and their leader, Javier Rodriguez. As they were about to dive into the famous Blue Room Cave, Javier briefed them on the safety measures and ensured they knew how to treat the marine life they would encounter. Melissa nodded attentively, Although excited, she adjusted her mask again and checked her equipment. The group descended into the warm blue waters and followed past the colorful fish darting between the coral formations. Melissa was at the back of the group, taking her time for that perfect shot of a school of yellow-striped grunts. She didn't realize how engrossed she was in taking pictures and drifted away from the leading group. As Melissa focused her lens onto a particularly vibrant piece of coral, she noticed a flash of silver. At first, she had thought it was just another fish, perhaps a tarpon or a large snapper. As she turned to get a better look, Melissa skipped a heartbeat. There, not far from her, floated one of the biggest great barracudas she had ever seen, its sleek body almost 5 feet long. Melissa had learned about barracudas during her diving courses. Though attacks on human beings were rare, the predators were known for their curiosity and occasional aggression in case of provocation or attraction to shiny objects. With growing unease, Melissa realized that the metal parts of her camera were gleaming in the sunlight and filtering through the water. The barracuda's cold, staring eyes seemed riveted on Melissa as it leisurely circled her. Her mind raced to reach back into her training, forcing herself to breathe easily and move extremely slowly. Any sudden movements could trigger a barracuda's predatory instincts. She spun around, feeling that spurting panic. No one was in view. She was alone with this menacing creature. Her mind had started racing with what to do. It was as if the barracuda had sensed her indecision. One surged forward, jaws open, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Melissa jerked up her camera, more of a shield than to take a picture. The snout bumped into the camera, and Melissa flinched, hitting the shutter button. A flash lit up the silver scales for an instant. The light surprised the predator, which moved backward a few feet. Melissa took this chance to back out from there slowly, keeping her eyes locked on the barracuda while trying to find her diving group. She could feel the pounding of her heart in her chest. The sound of her breathing was loud in her ears. However, the barracuda still needed to be finished with what it had wanted with her. It started circling again, faster and closer to her each time. Melissa knew she had to fasten up. She remembered Javier's instructions about aggressive sea life. Keep your eyes locked on the creature, remain upright in the water, and slowly swim upward. Melissa made a slow, cautious ascent, her eyes never leaving the circling barracuda. She moved her fins in languid, deliberate motions to not stir the water unnecessarily. The barracuda followed, matching her pace up through the water column. When Melissa thought she couldn't stand this tension anymore, she heard a faint noise. Turning slightly, she saw Javier and the rest of the group swimming toward her. Her heart swelled with relief, knowing she was okay for now, but she also knew she shouldn't drop her guard yet. Javier reacted quickly, gesturing to form a close circle around Melissa. With their combined strength, the group began ascending, forming a human wall between Melissa and the tenacious barracuda. The predator, now having multiple divers to compete with, looked to lose interest. With a flick of its tail, it disappeared into the blue depths. Coming up to the surface, Melissa's legs felt like jelly. She was grateful for the support of the other divers, which enabled her to get back aboard the boat. Finally, safe on board, the adrenaline that had overcome her while the action was taking place started to wear off, and she began shaking. The near miss on Melissa made Javier decide to shut down the dive and head into shore. Sailing back into the harbor, Melissa retold her tale of underwater woe. Her voice was still shaking a little as she told it. The other divers listened in stunned silence, offering her supportive words and congratulations on her level-headedness under pressure. As Melissa was to fly back home to Milwaukee for the next few days, she decided not to let this experience get her away from underwater photography. She wanted to use her expertise to teach others about marine safety and conservation. She even laughed and said that she would call the barracuda Flash to remember the camera flash that had saved her life. As Melissa boarded her flight home, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. She had come to Curacao in search of the perfect shot. Though that hadn't been captured precisely as she had envisioned it, she was leaving with much more, a story of survival, resilience, and a much deeper connection to the ocean she loved. In 2009, Emily Collins, a 28-year-old from Portland, Oregon, decided to take a much-needed break from her hectic life. She booked a vacation to Hawaii, a place she had always dreamed of visiting. Known for its pristine beaches, crystal-clear waters, and abundant marine life, Hawaii was the perfect getaway for someone like Emily, who had a deep love for the ocean. On the second day of her trip, she decided to explore the waters off the coast of Kauai, a place renowned for its coral reefs and the gentle giants of the sea, manta rays. Manta rays were known for their graceful movements and calm demeanor, often seen gliding through the water as if they were flying. Emily had read about them and seen countless pictures, and she was eager to witness these creatures up close. The locals assured her that manta rays were harmless and more interested in plankton than in humans. Armed with her snorkeling gear, Emily made her way to a popular spot where manta rays were often seen. The weather was perfect, with the sun shining brightly overhead and the ocean stretching out like a vast blue carpet. As Emily swam further out, she marveled at the underwater world beneath her. Schools of colorful fish darted in and out of coral formations, and the sunlight filtered through the water, creating a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow. After about an hour of swimming, Emily noticed a large shadow gliding beneath her. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized it was a manta ray. The creature was enormous, its wingspan reaching nearly 20 feet. It moved with an effortless grace, seemingly unbothered by the world around it. Emily was captivated. She had never seen anything so beautiful. Curious and excited, Emily decided to dive down for a closer look. She took a deep breath and submerged herself, kicking towards the manta ray. As she drew nearer, she could see its large eyes and the distinctive cephalic fins on either side of its head, which it used to funnel plankton into its mouth. The manta ray seemed peaceful, and Emily felt a sense of awe as she hovered a few feet above it. However, what Emily didn't know was that this particular manta ray had become increasingly agitated by the constant presence of tourists. It had been harassed before, with people trying to touch it or swim too close, and it had started to associate humans with danger. As Emily got closer, the manta ray sensed her presence and, feeling threatened, began to change its behavior. The ray suddenly stopped gliding and started to thrash its massive wings. The water around Emily churned violently as the manta ray attempted to ward off what it perceived as a threat. The powerful currents created by the ray's movements caught Emily off guard, pulling her downward and away from the surface. The force was so strong that it knocked the air out of her lungs, and she struggled to regain her bearings. Panic set in as Emily realized she was being dragged deeper into the water. The serene encounter she had imagined had turned into a terrifying struggle for survival. She kicked her legs and tried to swim upwards, but the manta ray's thrashing wings made it nearly impossible to break free. Each powerful stroke of the ray's wings sent her spinning, disoriented and desperate for air. Emily's lungs burned as she fought to reach the surface. She was losing strength, and the fear of drowning loomed large in her mind. She glanced upwards and saw the light of the surface growing dimmer, the manta ray's massive body blocking her path. The creature showed no signs of stopping, its large body creating a whirlpool effect that pulled Emily closer to its deadly embrace. As she struggled, Emily felt a sharp pain in her side as the manta ray's wing brushed against her with surprising force. The impact left her dazed, and she could feel her consciousness slipping away. But the thought of her family, her parents, her younger sister waiting for her back home, gave her the strength to keep fighting. Summoning every last bit of energy, Emily twisted her body and pushed herself away from the manta ray with all her might. She managed to break free from the vortex and started to swim towards the light above. The ascent felt agonizingly slow, her body screaming for oxygen, but she forced herself to keep going. Finally, Emily's head broke through the surface and she gasped for air, the salty water stinging her throat. She could hear distant voices, faint but growing louder. Turning her head, she saw a boat approaching rapidly. It was the tour group she had joined earlier, alerted by the commotion in the water. The guide, a local man named Kimo, reached out to her, and with his help, Emily managed to climb aboard the boat, her body shaking from exhaustion and fear. As the boat sped back to shore, Emily lay on the deck trying to process what had just happened. The manta ray, once a creature of beauty in her eyes, had become a symbol of the unpredictable dangers of the ocean. She had come face to face with a powerful force of nature, and it had almost cost her life. Back on land, Emily was treated for minor injuries and shock. She spent the rest of her vacation away from the water, her love for the ocean tempered by a newfound respect for its inhabitants. The experience had left her shaken, but it also deepened her understanding of the delicate balance between humans and the natural world. Emily's encounter with the aggressive manta ray was a stark reminder that even the most seemingly gentle creatures can become dangerous when provoked or threatened. She would never forget the sheer power of the manta ray's wings, or the feeling of being dragged into the depths. And though she would eventually return to the ocean, she would always carry with her the memory of that day in Hawaii when she came too close to one of the ocean's giants. It was the summer of 2011 when a quiet stretch of water in the Exuma Cays of the Bahamas was the setting for an unlikely family drama. The Hollisters, who had long been pegged as one of those who take the yearly vacation extravaganzas, chose a week-long yacht expedition through the crystal waters of the Caribbean to celebrate matriarch Linda Hollister's 70th birthday. The Hollister bunch boarded this adventure on a chartered luxury 100-foot yacht. The captain was an experienced sailor named Eustace Weatherby, but everybody called him Captain with a colorful epithet, Captain Eustace Weatherby, who always wore Hawaiian shirts. The family comprised Linda, her son Frederick, his wife Penelope, and their 3 children, Cassandra, 15, Tommy, 10, and Eloise, 7. Tommy Hollister was a freckle-faced boy with an overactive imagination and a newfound passion for pirates. He was practically glowing with delight for being granted the chance to take the trip. Over those first 2 days of the cruise, he could be found prancing around the ship's deck in an eye patch he'd made, holding a plastic sword and insisting everyone call him Captain Redbeard. Towards the 3rd day of their sailing journey, the yacht dropped anchor somewhere near a desolate cove with waters in a tempting shade of turquoise. The family was having a lazy breakfast on the deck when Tommy, amidst some mischief inspired by pirates, sprang into action. One can see its swashbuckling action. Tommy crept up behind his unsuspecting grandmother, admiring the view from the starboard side, and belted out his best pirate growl. With that, he playfully nudged Linda. What was supposed to be a harmless prank went very wrong when an unsuspecting Linda quickly caught off center, rocked forward, and then somersaulted over the edge with a cry of surprise. When Linda hit the water erupted with the biggest splash, and for a brief moment, all was silent. Then pandemonium broke out. Frederick raced to the side of the boat, yelling for his mother. Penelope, her face white as a ghost, grabbed Tommy's shoulders, shaking him as she shouted to know what he had done. It immediately aroused Captain Weatherby, who had been on watch in the wheelhouse. His practiced eyes quickly grasped the nature of the emergency, and he began shouting orders to a small crew to prepare for a rescue attempt. With the sudden impact, Linda floated in the water, her silver hair clinging to her head, spraying and shouting for help. Meanwhile, panic in the family multiplied, as Cassandra, looking over the railing, observed several dark shapes gliding underneath the surface, moving around the goldfish pool where Linda was floating. Cassandra shouted about sharks. Sharks had broken her voice. Sure enough, 3 reef sharks, attracted by the commotion, arrived to examine what was happening. Not particularly dangerous to humans, the sharks transformed what was now a desperate situation into a scene from a movie. By this time, Tommy realized he had made a terrible mistake. His high seas escapade was over. In its place was the cold fear that he had abandoned his grandmother to a watery grave. Captain Weatherby calmly set to work with the boat crew to lower the tender, a small motorized boat, to put ashore. As they prepared the rescue craft, he addressed Frederick and the burly first mate of the ship, Gus, and told them they should splash and make noise with long poles to frighten the sharks away. Penelope's arm wrapped its way around Tommy's shoulder, a maternal instinct gripping her heart. She hugged him close while she said all would be okay, even as her voice was laced with uncertainty. While in the water, Linda focused on staying calm. She recalled her days as a competitive swimmer and concentrated on treading water with smooth, easy movements to avoid alarming the sharks. Despite her efforts, the endurance required was already taking a toll on her. As the tender was being lowered, Eloise, the youngest Hollister, had an idea. She ran to her cabin and returned with her prized possession, an oversized, rainbow-colored inflatable unicorn float. Without a second thought, she threw it overboard near Linda, who was struggling in the waves. Seeing a giant inflatable unicorn in a shark-patrolled ocean might have been amusing in another situation. However, it turned out to be a stroke of genius. When Linda spotted the float, she swam toward it and grabbed hold. gaining some much-needed buoyancy and a buffer between her and the curious sharks. Captain Weatherby and Gus in the tender squeezed full speed toward Linda. The sharks would hold at this enigmatic distance. Apparent confusion regarding the arrival of the colorful intruder into their habitat was prevalent. With difficulty, they managed to pull Linda into the little boat, which was still clutching the unicorn float. Chattering her teeth, Linda couldn't help but chuckle through this ordeal at the insanity of the rescue. Quipping between chattering teeth, she said she never thought she'd be so happy to see a unicorn. Once aboard the Sea Siren, Linda was towel-wrapped and examined for injuries. To everybody's surprise, she was pretty whole, apart from a few scrapes. The entire family could now breathe a sigh of relief. Theirs were eyes teeming with tears, holding one another. Red-eyed and puffy, Tommy came over to his grandmother's seat. He felt tremendous guilt, the words barely out in an apology. She hugged him with the forgiving power only a grandma has after such an ordeal. She told him that though what he had done was extremely dangerous, she knew he had not meant any harm. However, she insisted that he understand that actions have consequences, particularly near the sea. That act became a turning point in young Tommy's life. While his love for pirates remained, it was now accompanied by a newfound respect for the sea and its inhabitants. He spent the rest of his vacation studying marine life, particularly sharks, and learning about their essential role in the aquatic ecosystem. His fascination grew with every account he read from Captain Weatherby, deepening his appreciation for the ocean's wonders. The incident in the Exuma Cays was a wake-up call for the Hollisters. They displayed continued love for the ocean, but handled it with new respect and caution. Tommy learned his lessons quickly and carried them until he became a marine biologist specializing in shark behavior and conservation. And so, what could have been a tragedy turned into a story of family resilience, all thanks to an unassuming inflatable unicorn. And a reminder that sometimes life's most essential lessons show up in the strangest packages, or floats.